I'm here. What's up, brother?
Afternoon.
I'm Mr. Madman Logan Creed, and you are?
Four Corner Photography President, CEO, and often janitor, John Paul Leblanc.
Sweet. It's nice you keep the bathroom clean, too.
Oh, yes, sir.
All right. Well, welcome to Life in a Headlock. I'm going to ask you a series of questions. I do not edit, so if we screw up, we're going to YouTube with it.
Understandable.
All right.
Botchamania, here we come.
We're going to be, you're a photographer. Yes. So my questions are going to be changed up, and I'm going to just flip some to you.
Okay.
All right. How long have you been a photographer for professional wrestling?
Oh, Lord. Got started back in the wrestling back in '75 when my grandpa brought me to Mid-States in Laranja. And when I was 12, I received my very own Nikon camera. Top of the line, Minolta, the old school style, but one of the best cameras you could possibly get for a young kid my age. My grandfather was military, so believe me, I had to learn how to break that thing down in the dark. And under 45 seconds, clip, 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 sneak, you know the whole trick. But all the military brats understand, you know. So I don't even know when to go back and count the years.
Let me ask you this because it goes into training, so I'm going to go with this. Who trained you to be a photographer? Did you just learn on your own?
Once again, there wasn't a lot of people doing what I do now in professional photography. There were certain places that you can go, and you would always see a fan with a camera. And basically, as a kid, you know, I never broke the rope. I was afraid to break the rope until I was 18 years old. I thought Bill Watts was going to crack my skull if I would have stepped across the line and tried to get a picture that most of these guys that were actually around the ring were able to get. And we all grew up with them. We grew up with Bill Apter. We grew up with Mike Alanos, Dr. Mike. We all grew up with George Napolitano, who, you know, he was outed from wrestling and started his own magazine. They wouldn't even let him in the building. He had to buy a ticket.
Nice.
You know, so we all start off like that. We all buy our tickets, and then we just get in good graces by being there diligently, being there early enough, and being there late. So we're kind of like the Marines, where the first one's in and where the last one's out.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this. I know Cornette did the same thing you did.
Oh, yes, Cornette, don't even want to leave him out. Yeah, Heyman came up that way also.
Were you ever there with them?
That was a whole different era back then.
Well, I know I've seen pictures with you. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, yes, sir. Well, we run into each other in the small locations and basically small wrestle cons and wrestle codes and whatnot nowadays because everybody's retired from doing it. No publications, no paper publications means it goes straight to video.
Well, I was going to ask you, have you ever had anything like hit PWI by chance?
I've had stuff in PWI. I know my stuff goes across many desks. We're talking Global Force with Jeff Jarrett. My stuff goes across. I know NXT has gotten to see a couple of our boys because of our pictures have been there in the forefront. So I know it's getting out there, but once again, with a larger company, I can't do as much.
It's still cool because I saw your picture with Cornette and I was like, I bet they have some interesting conversation about comparison stories.
Here and there, I will say that, you know, my photos will get used in books, autobiographies, biographies, and stuff like that. Not too long ago, author Tony Casanova wrote, I believe it was Kamala's book, and one of our pictures that I have of Kamala with his family is in the book. So here and there is smattering, but I'm just happy to see my stuff get out internationally on posters.
That's what I was going to say. With yours, you know, our guy Daryl, he uses your pictures more than anybody else's. You know?
Definitely. I'm happy that a lot of local talent now lately has been getting a chance to break out. My stuff is being seen in Japan. My stuff is being seen in Mexico, Canada, Montreal, British. I don't want to say British Columbia, but we're looking at over there in the UK, Puerto Rico, and I've just found out there's a whole group of guys that are down in Tuala, Colombia. There's 5 Lucha Libre factions in Bogota, and 2 of them been calling me like I can actually get down there and do something for them. The conversations are interesting.
That's awesome.
My little bit of Spanish and French, and their whole lot of Spanish and nothing.
Well, break it down, huh? All right, well, let's see. Tell me about the first match you ever took pictures of.
Whew, man. You know, it doesn't really stand out, and I can tell you that back in the day, it was probably around 78. My dad was taking us to a lot of places. We'd go to Baton Rouge. My dad was in a band, biker band, so you can understand the places that he used to go to. Matter of fact, they used to play a mile, not even a mile away from the Sportatorium in Dallas. The Longhorn, back then, Longhorn Ballroom. My dad opened for a bunch of David Allen Coe and a bunch of guys like that. So traveling with the band, you know, we would set up during the day. I'd get dropped off at the matches. They'd rest and relax, or whatever it is that musicians do. And then they would come and get me right before the show after the matches, and I would sit there the whole time behind the drum riser waiting for them to get finished so we could break everything down. But I do remember that it was in Dallas that my dad had got me a small Kodak camera, and it had a 4-flash tier. This is how old it is. Kids, Google this. The picture that comes up will be archaic, black and white. But this is the type of cameras we had when we were growing up. Nothing was easy.
No.
I mean, our first mobile phone was the size of this.
You know, like
so
7 days.
but I do remember that it was in the Sportatorium, and back then it could have been. I was definitely afraid of the Great Kabuki.
Oh God.
So it was, you know, Kabuki came in a little bit later in on that, but I remember the guy that was there was in the Kabuki style, and to tell you the truth, they had him under face paint, I don't know, but I was scared of the Japanese one more than I was of Kamala. Kamala was the, and Kabuki was like cut you up kind of stuff, so that was like one of the first matches I remember definitely wanting to take pictures of. You know, and like you said before, you know, as a kid, you get, you know, you take your stepsisters or your sister's camera and whatnot. I was fortunate enough to be blessed with 3 stepbrothers and 2 stepsisters, and they were all into wrestling, and they were all much older than me. So I would drag along or tag along. It depends on which cousin and stepbrother and stepsister you're talking to.
Sweet. Okay. Well, what has been your favorite match so far?
Ooh, Lord. You know, I've touched on some stuff before with Rock and Roll Express, because Ricky Morton himself is one of those guys that came down to the Mid-South region. Now, you know, I've already gone through, I've lived in Houston, Texas, so I've grown up with some Paul Bosch stuff. I've lived in Dallas, I've grown up with Fritz. I've seen the Joe Blanchard product out of San Antonio. We know all about Mid-South, even though Gulf Coast wrestling back over this way with Adrian Street, and I've lived in Selma, Alabama. Out of everything, I would say it would have to be just a Rock and Roll Express match. For some reason, I don't care who it is, what town you're in, I don't care if the crops come in, the harvest is in, Rock and Roll comes to town, they're gonna pack the place up, and as Ricky Morton puts, he's gonna have them hanging from the rafters. And my favorite one to have shot so far out of the Rock and Roll Express, and it's only because, boy, let me tell you, when Ricky's getting beat on, he's bleeding, he's pleading to the crowd, he's begging, and then you sound that crowd, and he goes, help me. Oh, man, the swell, you can feel it in the room, nothing like it. Nothing like it. It's a WrestleMania moment almost every time. And they're still doing the same gimmick.
Yeah. Hey, whatever works.
Exactly.
I'm fixing. Cool. All right. Well, give me your opinion on TV wrestling. The good of it and the bad of it. What's your opinion?
Right now, you're looking at the fact that TV wrestling has seen an explosion that is far beyond our years. When us guys were coming up and we used to sit there and we'd write our little pen pals and we'd put that letter in the mail and we'd wait and wait. And if you lived out on a rural route, you waited even longer. Now today, it's instantaneous. Kids can get on the internet, Google, ask Jeeves. You know, you can call across the continent for 50 cents. You know, there's no more $17 phone calls to find out what's going in between WCW, WWE, and ECW. So now everything is just such a focal point. at one point in the game, we knew that TV was taking over back in the 2000s because you can see over 47 hours of wrestling programming across the board.
Easily.
Saturdays and Sundays, Lucha Libre with AAA and CML. Then you had all your local stuff that was coming around if you were lucky enough that your smaller promotions were doing it. And then on top of that, you know, in between every single big time show that was making the loop back then, it was crazy about how much time it was on TV. Now, WWE has taken over. They've done figured out how to do the network. I still think there's some stuff that they need to put on there.
Yeah.
Some learning curve stuff for the kids. I mean, honestly, God, I don't want to seem old, but I remember that there was a guy that made a learn how to wrestle tape by taking all the drama out of all the tough enoughs and putting together a 5-minute match. And if you had that tape, you can work a 5-minute match. But he took all the drama out of it. So it makes it all readily accessible, and you don't have to get back into your car, grab your wife and kid, and load up to go see a show. I think it takes away from how kids are going to grow up and see this business. We can get on the phone right now and watch New Japan. Comes up in a heartbeat.
I like that too.
You know, we can watch Mexico now. I pretty much spend more of my time in front of the computer watching more indie stuff than I do watch the program stuff itself. Lucha Underground, I won't miss none of that.
I love Lucha.
Man,
I know some people can't stand it, but I love it, man.
I think it's, you know, Lucha Underground, of course, we're talking about a whole different beast because it's a different type of mentality. It's a Hispanic mentality. It's more pageantry. It's more everything else. But, you know, we have a lot of local TV here in the bottom 8 states, from Texas, Louisiana being covered, but Mississippi itself doesn't catch any coverage.
Not enough, anyway.
And I think that's something that can change here, considering that we have over 6 promotions running on almost a weekly basis. You know, so there's people like Body Slam Media Productions, there's people like Luke Cox from IoT, and, you know, APPWN with Big Ramp and Albert from Liberation Films, and of course myself trying to spread everything out. But
Only way to do it.
you know, sometimes I feel like a hot knife on cold butter. I'm spreading it thin.
Bologna sandwiches like that. Yeah,
Wish sandwiches. Wish you had some meat.
All right, let's see how good of a booker you are. Book me your dream match.
Yeah, that's a good one right there. 'Cause, man, I was just watching some Ricky Dragon, Steamboat, and Ric Flair stuff the other day. I said, man, is this stuff beautiful or what? 1985, 1987, this was wrestling. The story was told from the beginning. The crowd was brought into it. When it comes to booking something, I just don't think you can beat anything of that caliber. Of course, nowadays, you know, you want to talk about the Luther. Well, I'm sorry, it was Luther Reigns, but now.
I know what you're talking about.
But you know, you got your new crop of guys coming up, and they're not having those 20, 30-minute matches no more.
No.
They're not sucking in the crowd like those two guys. So I would have to say, if I ever had to book anything, it would definitely be a Steamboat and Ric Flair kind of thing. How it turns out is, I mean, we've seen nail biters between them. They've wrestled each other 50 times, if not even more, just in Florida. So you know, you're going to get a classic match. You're going to get a clinic. But yeah, I would say I would want to book those two. That would be something that would guarantee your audience.
I got one to give you, and just give me your opinion, because you said a while ago you gave me a guy that sells better than pretty much anybody in the history of professional wrestling. Ricky Morton versus Ricky the Dragon Steamboat.
Oh, the battles of the Rickies. Yeah.
I just thought, as a baby, you know, who would the fans get behind more?
In actuality, it's going to be a Morton.
You think
It
so?
will be a Morton
Really?
because, you know, God bless Ricky Dragon Steamboat. He's, you know, a Morton is a Morton.
Yeah.
A Morton's a second-generation wrestler. His daddy used to promote. I love the story about how Ricky Morton's daddy used to put up a ring in a parking lot and sell chairs. That's a damn salesman right there. Built like I wanted to, when I was doing my cooking stuff, I wanted to have a kitchen, and I was going to sell soup and random spoons. I figured, you know, if you could get away with it, I could. But you got to remember, Steamboat was not a steamboat. Steamboat was a blood.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things that, you know, when it's given to the name, your people are always going to go after your name as being.
You might know this. Hell, it may have happened. Did the Young Bloods ever fight the Rock and Roll Express?
I think they were too much on the same.
You think so?
I think they were on the same
Okay.
face level.
I thought so, and I know there wasn't a lot of face paint back in the day, you know.
And you know, those guys were hot because they came in off of Danny Little Bear.
Mm-hmm.
They came in off of Danny Planchas. They came in off of Pepper Gomez. I mean, really good top names that had already cemented a line from basically Albuquerque all the way to Memphis.
That's true.
You know, and
they used to not pass the heel versus face. It was always heel face, never
Exactly.
face. Every once in a blue moon.
Ricky Morton turned heel, and he said it was the worst 6 months of his life.
I vaguely remember that.
I have an old promo picture that he signed from that gimmick, and he says he hadn't seen it in over 20-something years, and he'd like to forget it.
I bet that's funny. When you start screwing people's pocketbooks, they get a little mad.
Yeah, when you can't make no money with the people out front, and they're chasing you down the road for another reason.
That's true.
Yeah, they wasn't chasing them for tail.
Well, let me ask you this, and I'm pretty sure I might know the answer, but what kind of wrestling do you like to watch? Do you like to watch Japanese, Southern, lucha, whatever?
Ooh, I'm a dirty whore. I will watch it all. I mean, I have seen, and I don't want to be like this, but a lot of folks start out in their backyards. As kids, you emulate who you like to see. Everybody's done this. But you know, I've seen some backyard stuff that was actually good, and I've seen guys come out of backyards that went somewhere. So I don't ever want to push the whole backyard product down, but I'll occasionally catch a few backyard stuff just to see if I can find that one little, you know, one little piece of coal and hopefully a diamond in the rough. But right now, I would have to definitely say Lucha Libre is really taking a forefront. We're shooting a lot more in the Alabama and Atlanta area for Lucha Libre. I'd love to see some Lucha come down here to New Orleans. I would like to think that Mississippi could take some Lucha.
I think we can. We have enough Hispanic audience in there.
Exactly. And like down in New Orleans right now, south of New Orleans in the Gretna area, huge Hispanic population. And no Lucha shows, but I mean, I know a lot of the folks over in Texas is blowing up right now. They're bringing in Rey Mysterio in the next 2 weeks. They're bringing in some of the top names across the board in the next few weeks into Memphis, Memphis and Albertville, Alabama. And I think that's Antonio Garza's club.
Yeah, I saw the poster the other day. They look really good, too.
You know, he's brought in Puma King, and he's brought in Dr. Wagner Jr. and a couple of guys, and named guys. I mean, always a good show, but yeah, I would have to definitely say I've just recently went through the whole WWE Cruiser Classic. Thought that was pretty good. We all know where they got the idea from. Cornette, call me. I think I can get your money. They stole your shit.
Ask you a question on that. Oh, you know, I told you I do this every once in a while. Do you think the right person won? You're the first person I've asked this, but I just want you to.
And I'm going to be one of these guys that says everybody gets their turn. Everybody needs to come up. Everybody needs to be seen in a positive light. That whole tournament, no matter how it was going to come out, with all the people from everywhere, nobody was going to be happy. You were not going to get a full consensus, just because you had so much international stuff going down.
That's true.
I think the Japanese possibly in the long run for the actual. If we was in boxing and you were Burt Sugar and me and you was talking scoring points, the Japanese would be a little high on the board, and then I would actually get you down into like Jack Sabre and some of the guys, and you know, just on the tier level. I agree with you. Nobody can beat a Japanese work ethic. 100 days training in a year for an American wrestler, and if you see some of those girls, it is 365 days. There's no vacation. It's 8 hours a day in the dojo, cleaning, cooking, sweeping. Oh, you wanted to get in the ring today? Oh no, you're gonna be sweeping the house. You're gonna be cleaning toilets. When you have a work ethic that builds up to that, jeez, you can come to America and make a steamroller over this place.
I would have bet a paycheck it was going to be Ibashi and Sabre Jr. I would have lost a paycheck.
That's why I'm not a betting man, and that's why I have a little bit of chump change to do what I do today. You know, I do not bet on wrestling. Pete Rose.
Let's see how I can word this one. This is actually about the good side and the bad side of wrestling. All right, here's how I can do it. Who would you rather take a picture of, a good guy or a bad guy?
Definitely a bad guy. Definitely a bad guy. A bad guy is thinking man. A bad guy is a person that knows that he has conviction and what he's doing is right. When that bad guy looks at you and he looks down the tip of his nose and he gives you that little, you know something's coming at you. You know you're catching a little bit more than just the and the cheer for and the cheer. Yeah, exactly. I think there's a lot more facial. We all know it's a tough job being the heel. You're doing the work of two people sometimes, and if you got a dumb referee in the ring, three.
Yeah, unfortunately.
So we don't have any dumb referees in our local area. I can contest. We don't have any jokes. All our referees are straight down the line, top guys.
There's no way I can do this. Because it don't work. You don't have a finishing move. Okay, well let's say if you did have a finishing move and you were a wrestler, what would you call it?
The Flash.
Yeah,
the Flash. That's all I got. Ah, yeah. 5'5", fat and handsome, but I'll give you the Flash.
All right. Well, this is the final question. But who has been there for you in professional wrestling on a personal level? If you'd like, here's your opportunity to thank them.
Oh man. First and foremost, I was out of wrestling for about 5 years. I went into the cooking business, got out, and you know, I've promoted, I've done a little bit of everything in the business, even loaded up the truck with chairs and done that end of it. But I was out doing nothing but the cooking thing, and I'll have to say I met Grizz, beautiful Bobby now, Bobby Grief, at a TNA show. And he actually let me know that there was local wrestling. I lived in New Orleans, and their wrestling was in Lafayette, which was about 150 miles away. And so when I got back into wrestling, I went from basically being in downtown Houston, hanging out with Tugboat Taylor and Chaz and all them at their school that they were running 2 blocks from my restaurant that I worked at. And then Booker T was running in the Prohibition Bar, like about another 3 miles to the east. I went to doing 150-mile round trips. And then plus going out towards Elton. But Bobby Grief is definitely one of the guys that brought me back into the business, got me back. It was a GCW show in New Iberia. Mustang Mike was there. You know, man had the body, had the look, ready to go. Had a couple more people. The show was entertaining. The crowd was packed, and I just got back on the buzz again and went and picked up another camera and just got back into it. And ever since then, you know, I'm never, without saying that, you know, Grizz got me back in the game, but I don't think I've been mistreated by anybody in this business. There's been some hesitation. Promoters thinking that I might be molding out some stuff, but I'm here to tell each and every one of you 50 promoters out there in 8 southern states, and ain't none of y'all stealing each other's stuff. Y'all all right.
That's always wrestling,
That's always.
It's always drama.
Yep.
Cool. Well, brother, thanks for being on Life in a Headlock. It's been a privilege.
Thank you, sir.
I've enjoyed it.
About time we finally got this thing nailed down.
I've been trying to get everybody all the time. It's kind of hard. I'm only one person.
Understandable.
All right, brother. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.